Hi everyone, welcome to ELI, the place where you get your daily dose of inspiration for entrepreneurship. And today we have with us Miss Mala Bhandari, who is the founder of Sadrag, an NGO working in the area of child rights and basic education. Mala is a graduate of Savitribai Phule Pune University and has worked for more than 20 years in leading social sector projects. Hi Mala, welcome to ELI.
Hi, Priya. Nice to be here.
Mala, I would request you to introduce yourself to our audience, please.
Yeah, sure. Of course, Priya has already made a small introduction about my name. I'm Mala Bhandari. I'm a sociologist. Uh, I am a PhD in sociology from Delhi University. And since 2004, I have been working in the nonprofit sector and also doing consultancies in different social sector projects and programs.
Mala, tell us about your venture, Sadrag. What is it about?
Yeah, sure. Sadrag is the full form of Sadrag Social and Development Research and Action Group. It's a non-profit organization, in other words, a non-governmental organization. And we started it as a group of professionals from different disciplines so that we could implement our learnings which we made at the university and come to the field and actually use them to improve the quality of life of people. So the journey began in 2004 when I decided that we actually don't have to limit ourselves within the four walls of an academic institution. We have to apply our learnings and teachings onto the ground. And we named it as Social and Development Research and Action Group because we are very actively engaged in research and we apply the results of this research onto the ground. Our focus areas are the three pillars of quality of life, that is education, protection, and livelihood. And we feel that it is the three main segments of population, that is youth, women, and the children, whose voices often go unheard and they are often deprived of their basic rights and entitlements. So that's how the birth of Sadrag took place.
Mala, what motivated you to start an non-profit initiative?
A lot of things, you know. It was a hard decision to make that uh, I will work through non-profit sector. I think the basic thing was that I was coming from the position of privilege. My family, though belonging to a traditional, setup in Punjab, migrated to Delhi and in early, 50s when my father joined Indian Red Cross Society. And the values of empathy and giving back to the society and were there in the family since father was with Red Cross. Uh, like other siblings who came from engineering, chartered accountant, medicine backgrounds, I was a different lot. I never wanted to have those traditional occupations as my career. I wanted to do something which was, which could bring me happiness. And I was privileged because money wasn't a criteria in the family for someone to choose the occupation. And second thing was that the environment was quite liberal. So I could do what I wanted to do. Uh, yes, I had to do academically well. So I could study post-graduation, MPhil, and then PhD. But nothing was enforced on me that, look, you have to become a professor or you have to become, somebody else which fetches a lot of money. I, After I finished my MPhil, I joined Jesus and Mary College, DU, as a lecturer. But somehow I realized after a few months that teaching was not my cup of tea. My soul was, desperate to do something which could actually satisfy me and make me happy. So those conflicts in me, those frustrations in me, kept taking place, and I kept looking for my, passion. And then one day, I remember I was watching a Hindi movie at Chanakya Cinema in Delhi, and I told myself, Mala, this is the time to take the plunge, because I had a very bad experience when I was working after doing my PhD at a non-profit sector organization. I wasn't, it was a bad experience. So I said, no, I would bring a change in this sector. I would bring more of education and more of development paradigm in this sector. So I thought of starting the non-profit organization rather than going for a for-profit organization.
Okay. So Mala, there are a couple of questions that are coming to my mind. First thing, you mentioned that uh, uh, having a privileged background has a lot of role to play of being someone as a social entrepreneur or as a founder of non-profit initiatives. Also, it is clearly evident that most of the non-profit ventures running around the world are backed by some of the privileged individuals, like Bill Gates is there, and like the founder of Amazon is also there. So many of the wealthy people around the world are funding the non-profit ventures. So here is my question to you. Uh, how does a person who is not from a privileged background get into something that is non-profit? What would be the motivation behind for that person to start something like this?
Priya, when I said I'm coming from a position of privilege, I didn't mean that I had a lot of money. What I meant to say was, in those times, the girls were not permitted to do what they wanted. So I was privileged because I could do what I wanted. So it's coming from that position of
Hmm.
privilege, maybe in terms of social freedom.
Okay.
We started Sabrag with 18,000 rupees
Hmm.
because we had no money. I wasn't earning that time.
Hmm.
And obviously, starting a non-profit sector organization, you would not be taking money from your parents,
Hmm.
you know. So whatever I had made after working for my last organization, the money that was left with me was 18,000. And that was the core fund, which we funded, we started, Sadrak. We had no money to hire people. I did everything, right from writing the proposals, right from looking for what we wanted to do. Everything was done by me because there was no money to pay to anybody.
Hmm.
And for so many years, even till date, I'm not withdrawing even a single penny from the organization, because what I took a middle path. I said, look, this is a venture where we wanted to put our learning on ground, but because I'm highly qualified, I should be doing research and other assignments which will give me my income.
Hmm.
So whatever assignments, whatever development projects I take, my earning comes from there.
Okay.
So it was a kind of overworked, but I could balance the two. And you rightly said that a lot of organizations are coming from that position of privilege. and talking of Bill Gates and all, these are the people who invested, who understood that there is a social need and they had money to invest,
Hmm.
right? So they are different. That is a different model altogether.
Hmm.
We had to fight our way. We had to find fun to do what we wanted. When we started in 2004, we wanted to talk about women like me and others, not the women like who were already accomplished or who had got the things through heredity,
Hmm.
because we know the life of a woman to prove or to do something different in life is full of struggle.
Hmm.
So we started a network of professional women in Delhi, right? Where we could talk about the challenges, the roadblocks which come in the life of a woman if when she ventures out to do something of her interest.
Okay.
And slowly we went towards the development sector.
Hmm.
When somebody, you asked the question, coming from a humble background and starting an organization like this may not be may not be that easy. All the ways, whether it's my way or his way or her way, things are difficult. Things are not easy because running a non-profit sector organization is actually a challenge in itself. It has to be based on several things.
Hmm.
In a for-profit organization, it is the motive of profit,
Hmm.
uh, which is the dominant one.
Hmm.
But in a non-profit sector, it is funding from this side and investing into the other side. And this other side is improving the quality of life of people. So you are dealing with people, people's lives. So that's how this sector is distinctively different from the for-profit sector. So challenges are, both sides are the same.
Hmm. I understand most of the points, Mala, but I still did not get answer to my question. What drives someone to be a social entrepreneur? I think human beings are motivated from the rewards they get from doing something. So
Mm.
somebody pursues a venture, somebody who starts a venture for profit. The reward he gets is in terms of money or well-being or increased purchasing power and many things he'll get from that. But when somebody becomes a social entrepreneur or somebody who has found a NGO, he doesn't get any incentive out of it from a personal level. His family doesn't get any privilege. His you know his well-being is not taken care of. Why would somebody be motivated to pursue social entrepreneurship?
I would give the answer to your question in only one sentence. Uh, when your heart beats for others, you give birth to a social enterprise. When you feel that other people are deprived of the privileges and the rights that they were supposed to be getting, your heart beats for them. You want to do something. I remember I was in school in class 5th or 6th, and during those days, agitations against the dowry system were taking place all over India. I I never came from the family where people would go out, will be vocal about these concerns. But I don't know what happened to me. I was small, a little girl, but I led the agitation in my school. I took out jalus on roads saying, Dahej nahi lenge, Dahej nahi denge. Now, the answer is why? Why did I feel so? Because I looked at this practice as a very heinous practice, which brought women much lower in social status as compared to other components of the population. So my heart said that, look, we have to do something for this. This practice has to go from the society. Many such, instances took place where I had direct fight with people because they were suppressing the others. So this can't be monetized. This is something which has no monetary value, but it has a value where you feel good that yes, if you had a good time in life, you are helping others also to have a good time in life, a good quality of life. Very simple equation. I will not complicate it any further.
Uh, but I still do want to debate further on this, Mala. So, as you mentioned, if your heart beats for others, then you are someone who can do social entrepreneurship. Having said that, I think if you look, we just celebrated our Independence Day, 74th Independence Day. When you go back 75 years in the times of Gandhiji or Nehru, they were the people whose heart was beating for somebody else, because the society was like that, because of the culture, because of the people back then were like that. But now if you see, the time has changed. Our society is based or built on self interest. We are a capitalistic society. So if somebody if a parent sends his child to school, the purpose why somebody receives education is to make money. So that is the kind of society we live in. uh, how do you think somebody see if you build something out of the existing concepts or existing norms in the society, you have to borrow those concepts from the existing norms as well. So what I'm trying to say is, somebody who has seen poverty, who has seen uh, self-interest and uh, money driving things in the society, how can he become something uh, uh, what you mentioned, your heart beats for others. If you observe closely, our politicians, our government, everything is driven by the monetary aspect. There is a monetary aspect to everything. There is a monetary capitalistic interest to everything. In a society like this, where hospitals, educations, almost everything is driven by the capital or money, how how does someone become a social entrepreneur? Let's talk the practical aspects of being a social entrepreneur.
Yeah. See, there are two things in this. One is a social entrepreneur, and second is the non-profit sector organization. I think non-profit sector organization is something which is based on a very different model, right? What is the journey of social sector? The journey of social sector is it began from philanthropy, and it's come to development, and now it's going towards CSR. So it has been a constant journey from charity to the development approach and to the social CSR approach. So this journey has been taking place over years. I'm not saying that a non-profit sector organization can run without money. Money is central to it. But what I mean to say is a person doesn't run an organization for personal economic gain. All right. If there is a non-profit organization, it has a proper framework, it has proper funding, it has proper financial, what do you say, the framework, the policy, the agendas, everything. So the entire funding to an organization is divided. But what is coming to the founder, or what is coming to what do you say, the managing committee or the board of the organization is immaterial, because they never began this organization from the monetary point of view. They always wanted whatever funding comes to the organization is used to sustain the organization and to invest on ground. Because, for instance, I'll give you a very small example. If tomorrow somebody, an institution, till date we have had all the institutional funding to Sadrak. Yeah. So if an organization is giving us funding, so that funding is divided across different categories. That funding has to be spent across those categories. So so what we do is we purposely tie our hands and saying this fund should not be misutilized. This should be utilized as per the norms, as per the norms which have been decided with the funding partner. So there is very little scope for any kind of personal economic gain or a personal this thing. A person from humble background would start an organization like this only if he feels that yes, more than his own personal economic gain, it is the economic gain or the social gain of others which matters at the end of the day. I think it is based on very altruistic value system. Somewhere down the line, I also see that this sector is undergoing a change, especially with CSR coming. Now they're talking of corporatization of NGOs. Now, can NGO become a corporate entity? It cannot. Come what may, it cannot. Some norms may change, some values may change, but the basic tenet of an NGO remains. And the person who has founded it or the board members have to run the organization on the basis of that. Even today, in COVID times, when there are a lot of challenges getting funds for programs on education, protection, and livelihood, what is the priority before us? Priority is that the organization should not suffer. The functions of the organization should remain. So, you have to see in those lights. People who look for personal economic gain should not and must not enter this sector as per my personal view.
But Mala, when you look closely, at least when I look closely, I think there has to be a middle ground between corporate and non-profit. I think we should come up with a model where a social entrepreneur is also incentivized for the work, and also we may draw best aspects of a corporate and best aspects of an NGO and club them together to make a even better model. Anyway, that is my view, and the debate is endless, Mala. Now I would get into the personal aspects of being an entrepreneur, which is the core discussion we have in all the interviews. First, would like to know, when you started your venture, how did your family react to it? I'm assuming you had a good career with a good education, and when you started something for the society, not many Indian parents should say, "Yeah, go and do this." So, how did your family react to it? I'm curious to know.
Yeah, when I started in 2004, I was a married woman, and I was married to an Air Force officer. And this was in 2002 that we migrated to Delhi, and my husband took up his posting in Air Headquarters, Delhi. I started doing a job in an NGO in Delhi, and somehow I told you I didn't have a very good experience, and I thought that we should reform this sector. So I'll have to take the plunge. I looked at it as my responsibility, to be a part of this sector. So my parents saw my struggle, how I was on the road 24 hours a day, and doing this, doing that. It was a very difficult and a very challenging time for me in life. But somehow I was enjoying it thoroughly. I thought, yes, this is something, which was missing in my life. I already had a husband, 2 children, a good stable life, but there was something missing in my personal life. So my parents asked me, I remember my mother asked me, Mala, do you earn anything or not? I said, Mama, I earn a lot of money. I will show you one day. And we were in Noida, and we had started this program called Ukta Suraj, where 120 children were mainstream, out of school children were mainstream in the formal school system. And we had a huge program where NCPCR people and other government officials had come. I invited my parents there. My mother, my father, and my sister came, and they saw that huge congregation of people, and how these children who had never dreamt of going to the school were there, and they were feeling so good about it that yes, now they'll be carrying a bag and going to school every day. The function went on well. I met my parents the next day, and my mother says, you know what did she say? She says, Mala, you earn a lot of money. Those were her words. And my father seconded that. And there was no looking back for me. My children were growing that time, but somehow they saw me struggling, and implicitly, they also imbibed these values of sensitization. They felt that our mother is sensitized to a certain issues. And whenever I came home after dead tired from work, they used to ask me, how did the day go? And I used to tell them, this is what we did today. And somehow they started also ingraining these things, Um, and so things became easier for me to do. I missed a lot of the childhood of my daughter because I was not home. But I felt as if the children I'm working for and working with are all my children. And today when I see my children, they are grown up now, I see them very sensitive. And I see a gleam in their eye is what has been my journey like.
Mala, this is my question to you. How did you manage your finances being an NGO founder? I understand that being associated with an NGO, the income may not be consistent. Sometimes NGOs run out of funds, and there's a lot of uncertainty associated with it. How did you, and how does someone else who is in your place also manage a situation like this, the income?
Yeah, sure. See, for Sadrak, there have been many roadblocks, many challenges when it came to funding. But I have noticed one thing. If somebody works with loyalty, with honesty, and shows good results, people come to you. People are there to support you. There is no dearth of supporters. But you have to win their loyalty. You have to show them that, look, this is where your money is going. This is how the utilization of funds has been done. So you have to earn that reputation in social sector. The first day when we conceptualized this organization and started working, that was the one value which till date is with us. And that value came from my father. I imbibed it from my father. He was working with Red Cross. After leaving Red Cross, he started working in the field of finance. He was a finance officer there. So his bosses were always like, okay, here is Mr. Bhandari, who can not let even a penny of the Red Cross go waste or misutilized. So that kind of thing, I had always seen him earning that name. And I imbibed in it. Your family teaches you a lot. Family teaches you a lot. And so when I started this, that was one thing, that there has to be no misappropriation of funds. And हमने देखा लोग हमारे साथ जुड़ते गए. There were some hard times also when some difficult decisions needed to be taken because we were cornered many times. But somehow we solved those problems. because the basic value system, the core values of Sadrak always remained intact with us. Anybody who is joining this sector has to see that he has to, or he or she has to have a balance between personal economic gain and the organization's economic gain, right? So for personals, if you have a good education, you make your own way. You do consultancies at a personal level. And you are also, besides that, and whatever funds are coming to the organization, let them be spent for the organization. I remember we had a project which was handled by me. I solely handled it with the help of the team. So the team member's salary came to me. But then I earned that salary from Sadrak, right? I led the project and I took that salary. I was justified. After that, we have always had the project teams. So their salaries are more important than my salary. And I said that through my personal consultation. So no NGO can work on one fixed funding model. It has to be a hybrid, right? It has to be a hybrid model. And never join this sector for personal gain. If that funda is clear with the founder, things are not that difficult then.
Okay. Mala, I have another question for you regarding the incomes and these sort of aspects. So I personally have interviewed appeared interviews for some of the openings at NGOs. And what I have found is almost all the interviews, I was asked the same question. Would you, are you, can you take a cut on your previous salary to join this role? Are you willing to work for a lesser salary? So my question is why it is expected for someone who is into non-profit to earn any less than who has been working in corporate, because the efforts they put is the same, and uh, their expenses are the same, nothing is going away. Why and how NGOs expect uh, the people working with them to earn less?
It depends which organization you're talking about. What is the size of that organization? There are international organizations which pay pretty good. There are big mother NGOs which pay pretty good. But there are NGOs which have a very limited budget. So there one cannot expect to have a salary, big salary, Like we have a major challenge. We can't offer good salaries to people. So we have to manage with whatever is available, because programs have to run. So what we do is that, like, if I'm the senior, I'm at the helm of affairs. I help these juniors join us and I groom them for a bigger role. So that is the major problem. Like Sadrak cannot afford a good or a highly paying person, but we give them an opportunity to grow. And we tell them, use this organization as a stepping ladder to go to a bigger organization. There is no dearth of big international organizations these days. I'll give you my personal example. If I go to an NGO with a consultancy, I charge less. But if I go to a UN Women-like organization or Save the Children organization, my charges are obviously more, right? So for the similar kind of work, the charges get different. So I never say that, okay, I'm going to this organization which is based in South or in North, and they are working on ground. So I see what kind of work is there. So there are parameters. I see, and then I code the charge. So this is with everybody. So there is no thumb rule that needs to be followed. It varies from individual to individual, what parameters they have in mind and how they would like to follow them.
Mala, would like to know what are the challenges you face along the way while building this venture?
Lot of challenges. When we started Sadrak, we didn't know that one day we will be a structured um, organization which will have about 20, 25 people working there. We didn't know that. We just started because we were fresh from the university and we had the dream of changing the world, the society, how it works. So, but gradually over time, we realized that as we want to work more and more, that too with the development paradigm, we have to, have people working. So it has to be a structured organization. It has to be formalized, but still we try to keep it as flat as possible. uh, that structural Giving it a structural functional framework was has been a big challenge for us. And second thing is, yes, the trained people, whom we could employ, whom we could have with us, and you know, work better, maybe more efficiently. So now the thing is, we rest on volunteers. We have freshers from the universities whom we groom, and they work with us because the toll of work is taken by me. So maybe we feel that Sadrak can work only like that.
Mala, when you started, you would have needed some of co-founders. Do you have any co-founders for this venture? If you have, how did you recruit them?
We are a group of 7 people who have formed this organization, and we come from different disciplines. In a way, we complement each other. So when we recruited, or when we had this group of 7 people, we definitely, the major criteria was the formal education or academic qualifications. So we went by that, and we also saw their interest, how much interested they are in this sector, whether it is genuine even or not. So only these 2, 3 criterias were there when we selected the people. And it was very important that these people have to be with the same value system as we are. Because if they are coming from a different value system, then it may not be possible for Sadra to work as a coherent organization.
Okay. Uh, Mala, we are almost up with time. I have many more questions, but for the time constants, I'll have to limit. To just 2 more questions. How
Yeah.
do you how do you compare entrepreneurship with a 9 to 5 job, be it social entrepreneurship or be it for-profit entrepreneurship? How do you compare it with
Yeah.
a job?
I think a very relevant question in today's times, because we need more of entrepreneurs than people who are looking for job.
Hmm.
An entrepreneur, needs to be very bold and very decisive. So a person who has these things, that urge to grow, to be, experimental, to be innovative, to be taking risk in life. That's how I define an entrepreneur. Yeah. Um, there's a major difference. An entrepreneur has to have a very macro perspective, which a person who may be looking for a job may not have. I think that area of influence, that area of perspective is very different with an entrepreneur and a person who is in job. I'm not saying that people in job are like frogs in the well. No, because work roles have changed with time. Work priorities have changed, and technology, the internet has broadened our horizons,
Right.
our mental horizons. So there is not that kind of reference. I would say at the end of the day, an entrepreneur is the one who has to take care of the salary of others.
Hmm.
Yeah. So has to see that his or her venture is productive enough to not pain the people who have put in their hard work and sweat into building that organization. So an entrepreneur is looking more for others, you know, within the given framework of constraints and restraints.
Mala, my last question to you. How do you suggest our audience to start their journey as entrepreneurs? Now, let me tell you a bit about our audience. They're students and young people who have dreams of doing something of their own. How do you suggest they get started with the venture?
Don't think much, just get into it, is my message. If you think a lot, you will be more surrounded by the constraints and restraints of this sector, entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is not easy. I would reiterate, it's not easy, but you sleep beautifully at night if you have one good day spent within the frame of entrepreneurship. The youth of our country is very smart. It's much smarter than what we were in our time. We had dearth of information, we had dearth of knowledge. The only source of information to us was our universities and the institutions where we studied and worked. These days, youth has all the excess of knowledge and information from all sides. They are much better informed than we were. Look for your inherent qualities, identify them, recognize them, and respect them. Take the plunge. Believe me, guys, you will be very happy tomorrow. You will have no regrets because it's only in young age that you take a step forward. As you grow old, you become reluctant in taking a new step or a risky step. Only at the age of 20, 25, 28, 30, you are full of hopes, dreams, and that urge to do something, to change the world. Take the plunge and do it. Don't stop. You are the unstoppable youth. Don't get stopped by personal, family, systemic, what do you say, the constraints. There'll be many roadblocks in your way. But if you are determined, you are confident, you will make your way and will never have any kind of regret in life. Take this from me.
That was a lovely message, Mala. I would like to say it was a great pleasure and an honor to host you at TLI. And our audience would have definitely got lifetime lessons from this video. Thanks, Mala, for your time and our best wishes for Sadrag.
Thank you very much, Priya, for having me over. I'm very happy to voice my thoughts and look forward to more meaningful discussions with you on your platform. Thanks a lot.
Viewers, you can connect with Mala on LinkedIn by searching for Mala Bhandari. Also, to visit their website and get associated with them also by typing sadrag.org. So, whom do you want to have here at ELI for next episode? Do let me know in comments below. We'll be back. Stay tuned to ELI.